welcome to another episode of my weird little podcast. This is Tia. You know me. It's a very exciting episode. Today we have Mitchell Routzen, Mr. Spooky, number 13. And he is our guest for today. And you might know him from TikTok at Mr. Spooky 13, or seen his season on Worst Cooks in America. And in the future, possibly you'll be listening to his beautiful voice on his very own podcast. How are you feeling today?
Oh, just dreadful. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you for being here. So
I hope I hope you had a full, healthy breakfast, Tia.
I didn't. I had coffee and some water.
Good, good,
Actually,
because there will be less for you to gag up later when I tell this story.
funny thing, I've been reading that book. You actually suggested a book to me, and now
Which one?
title eludes me. I found it
Ghostland?
on Audible, Unidentified. By,
Oh, that's a good one. Ooh, girl.
hold on, Unidentified by Colin Dickey. And last night I was at the part where
Yes, yes.
they are talking about Olympia and like there's like meat raining from the sky. And
Yes, yes.
like at that very moment, I was like eating chicken wings. And I had to like skip ahead to the next chapter. So I'll have to go back and hear that story because like that's definitely going to be a fascinating podcast episode. And I definitely want to do that. But it was pretty um gross to say the least,
That
you know?
that book is fascinating. For your listeners, I strongly suggest Colin Dickey's Ghostland and also Colin Dickey's I almost said Uninvited. What was it? Unexplained? What was the name of the book again? Where do I have it?
Oh,
I have it here
no,
in my the Unidentified. That's what it's
I
called.
didn't. Yeah.
I definitely suggest both of those books. He flat out says in Ghostland, my job here is not to convince you that ghosts exist or anomalous phenomenon exists. I'm just here to kind of give you the history of it. And he
Mm-hmm.
in Ghostland especially, he goes into detail about like a lot of these haunted places. And very much debunks a lot of the stories with like the actual history of the time, but also says, kind of that like Sherlock Holmes thing, whatever, once you eliminate all the possible outcomes, once you eliminate all the possible explanations, whatever remains even bizarre is the explanation. So it's very much like that.
I really appreciated how skeptical he was of things,
Hmm.
but not in like a condescending way, you know, just
No,
like
no,
very
yeah,
matter of fact way. Uh, you know, you know, uh,
yeah, definitely.
I may or may not in the past have been a part of a job that made me kind of say half truths a lot, or like, allow people to have belief in something that, you know, may or may not have been overblown. So it was just very refreshing to read this book that doesn't, you know, jump on the ghost train, as I've said before. Although if
Mhm.
there was a ghost train, I would jump on it. But
Oh, without a doubt. I had spooky ghost trains. Bring them
yeah,
back. Make those a thing again.
but it was really refreshing to hear his take on it, but yet also like hear these really creepy, true phenomenons that happened, that don't really have an explanation, but he is able to like give some explanation for some things,
Yes.
pretty fascinating.
Just you wait till his chapter about the Betty and Barney Hill abduction. Oh, that's a good
Ooh,
one.
ooh, okay, all
Yeah,
right,
that's a
okay,
good one.
cool,
That's
cool,
a good
cool.
one. It kind of makes you re-examine the gray alien phenomenon after it. You'll like it. So yes, listeners, if you can get a hold of any of Colin Dickey's Ghostland or Colin Dickey's The Unidentified, both books are really good. Really kind of opens your mind to like the not exactly skeptical poo-pooing on paranormal phenomenon, but like Ghostland is all about the like social history of an area, and it's very much like a social studies book,
Hmm.
but it's fascinating. And I'm very much team. Sarah Winchester was not like a kook holed up in this mansion contacting spirits kind of thing, and that's very much in his book.
Oh yeah, yeah. She just had arthritis, you know.
She just had arthritis, peeps. She and you know, and she just wanted to put money into her community.
Yeah, yeah,
So she, you know, paid three times as much what these workmen would get in another job, and
yeah.
you know, kept them working as much as she could. But enough of that. That's not the story we're here to talk about today.
No, 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 no. Okay, all right. I'm so excited about your story. I know a little bit about this, but yeah, I was very careful to forget everything that I know, and
Yeah.
I'm very excited of what you got here. So, okay, go ahead.
All right. So, as you know, I was on Worst Cooks in America, which a lot of our dishes could be considered kind of scary. But the story I'm going to tell you all today is about someone who didn't really necessarily cook the food he ate, but had quite a voracious appetite. Listeners, today we are going to talk about Tarar. Now, Tarar, we don't know if that was actually his name or if that's like a pet name or a stage name even he took up. He was born near Lyon, France in 1772. So this kind of puts us in that time frame of, you know, pre-French Revolution. A lot of his story actually does take place during the French Revolution.
Mhm.
We're talking we're talking peasants starving, that kind of era.
Les Miserables, you know.
Actually, Les Mis
Mhm.
takes place post French
Oh,
Revolution. Les
okay,
Mis
okay,
takes
yeah, for
place
sure, for
in
sure.
like 1840,
Okay.
but
I
same kind
won't.
of
Oh, I was gonna say I
yes.
won't imagine it as a musical then.
Actually, you can because okay, so Terrar, when he grew up, had a voracious appetite. Like he just ate and ate and ate. Um, and when he became a teenager, his family, who were like poor farmers, they're like, we can't keep feeding you. You're literally eating us out of house and home.
Mm.
And they kicked him out of the house. So he found himself on the streets. This is very much gets Les Mis ish because he's
Mhm.
hanging out on the streets with like pickpockets and thieves and ladies of the evening and things like that. And he would make money swallowing things. Um,
Mhm.
he would have people like give him corks and rocks and things like that, and he would swallow them. And people would be like, "Ah," but then they'd give him money because you know. Um, Terrar, when he was a teen, was described eating one fourth of a whole cow carcass. Now, not a full cooked cow, but
Oh my goodness.
like just a cow that probably like killed over and passed away in the fields. And that
Jeez.
was right about when his family kicked him out. So he's like kind of hustling on the streets when he
Yeah.
becomes the warm up act for what they describe as a traveling charlatan. So
Mm.
I'm just imagining like Sweeney Todd Pirelli's Miracle Elixir. I'm imagining him being the warm up act, like you know, eating a live bird or something like
Oh yeah.
that.
Yeah. Why is there not a Terrar musical? You know? That
I if there's anyone listening to this who is more musically inclined, I feel like this actually would make a great
yeah.
musical.
I'm gonna
um
look at my husband right now and make it
so
happen.
as the warm-up act, he would swallow corks, rocks, live animals, and they said his favorite food was live snakes.
Oh no. At this point, I realized you
um
never gave the trigger warning for the
yeah.
story.
So
Sorry.
warning to those of you listening, Tarar had quite interesting tastes. So
Yeah.
this story is going to have very gruesome depictions of eating animals alive, um, and other items that he would eat, and a lot of poo. The story has a lot of poo, and we're not talking Winnie the Pooh. We're talking what happens when you eat a quarter of a deceased cow. um,
Fantastic.
so he's traveling around with the charlatan, and in 1788, he took the show to Paris. And around here, he's doing his show, and he gets basically a big case of constipation, and he like kills over constipated, and the people who were like watching him, swallow an entire wristwatch, take him to a hospital where he's given extreme laxatives to kind of take care of that situation.
Yeah. Oh God.
Oof. So this is like the 1770s, 1780s. Um, you can only imagine what the laxative would have been, because back then they really only did like, they gave you like laudanum and then bled you. So that's medical science back then. Um, he would eat an entire bushel of apples during his show. He'd have someone bring like a basket, a big bushel of apples, and he would just open his mouth wide and just start eating them all entirely. Now, with what I've told you about Terrar and his appetites, how would you describe what he looks like? What would you imagine Terrar to look like?
Oh, I imagine his teeth probably weren't that great. You
That's
know,
correct.
probably a mouth big enough, to fit some things in it. I don't know. For some reason I imagine that he's really short, but I don't know.
Do you imagine him as being fat?
Um, you know, having watched the movie Super Size Me, and the guy who eats McDonald's every single day was like super skinny, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say no, not really. I guess that he was
Terrar
skinny.
Terrar was skeleton skinny.
Oh wow.
He barely weighed 100 pounds. He
Oh wow.
but his stomach, the skin around his stomach, the skin was so stretched out that part of his show he would wrap it around his waist. But when he ate and ate and ate, his stomach would
What?
extend like a giant balloon. It would get
Oh my
taut and just
God.
extend like a balloon. Um, his jaws would extend up to 4 inches. So, like, when he opened his mouth wide enough,
Oh my
it would
God.
extend, and the skin around his jaws were so loose that it's described here he could fit 12 eggs in his cheeks. So just imagine like a squirrel with like nuts in their cheeks. Just that's Terrar's cheeks with 12 eggs. And
Oh
he would do that as part of his show too. He was
wow.
hot. So he was hot to the touch, and he would sweat profusely. So this brings up
I'm like
another fun
sweating
point.
profusely right now.
um, this brings up another fun point of the Terrar story. He stank so bad. And this is like pre-French Revolution France. Like they're used to stinky. Like people just threw their waste into the streets. No, Terrar was described as having a stench that was so bad you couldn't be within a distance of, and I'm quoting this, you couldn't be within a distance, and he could not be endured within a distance of 20 paces. So that means like you got to be 20 steps away from him before you don't, he doesn't stink.
Oh
Um,
my goodness.
and the smell was worse after he ate.
Ugh. Oh
So after
man.
he ate, they describe his eyes getting bloodshot, and a mysterious vapor would rise from him. And I'm just like, is that just like the cartoony stink lines from
Yeah.
like that's just what I'm imagining.
Oh no.
I like I'm just imagining like this person's a mess. And
Yeah.
not only that, just like he would just eat and eat, and it wouldn't satisfy his hunger. So he would go out and like prowl the gutters looking for trash. Um, he would fight dogs in the streets if they had scrap. Like he would like get on all fours and fight dogs if they had scraps of meat.
What?
So suffice to say, Terrar had chronic diarrhea. Like we're talking just everywhere. And that was described as being quote unquote fetid beyond all conception.
God.
Ooh. So so suffice to say, this is not a pleasant person to be around. But people love to watch him just extend those giant jaws and like
Oh yeah.
swallow entire like he would have like they would throw corks and things at him. They'd throw trash at him and he'd eat it. I'm just imagining someone on YouTube said if Terrar was around today, he would have a mukbang channel.
Oh
I'm
no.
just imagining Terrar's see what I eat in a day in France with Terrar.
Oh God. Oh my goodness.
So he's just released from the hospital. It's now 1792, and it being France, they're at the War of the First Coalition, and Terrar joins the French Revolutionary Army, and so he's joining basically because he's like, I can get free square meals a day. I can get this is a source of food for me.
Hmm.
Um, I don't imagine he was very educated because one, he was, a peasant farmer's son who was put out on the streets when he was like 14 to 17 years old.
Mhm.
So, like it's a good choice for him because he's able to get food that way. Um, so he would, he's in like military training, and the rations obviously didn't satisfy his hunger enough.
Hmm.
So he would scour dung heaps for scraps, and he
Oh.
would carry out tasks for other soldiers, like, oh, I'll do latrine duty if you give me your part of your rations for the day. And they're like, oh, okay, whatever, just go away, Terrar, you're stinky.
Oh.
um but because he's not getting the amount of food that he normally gets, in shortly after he joins the army, he was admitted to a military hospital, Suits Sous Forets, and I have completely butchered that French. He was admitted to the hospital with extreme exhaustion. While at the hospital, he was given quadruple rations. He would eat leftovers that other patients didn't finish. So it'd be very much like, you're going to eat that pickle? And Terrar would eat that pickle.
Could you
Um,
imagine though being sick in the
being
military
sick.
hospital, but then having to be like down the bed from him, you know?
Oh God. I like I'm just imagining him being like this like human nightmare. Like
Yeah. Oh
giant
no.
black hole, like the skeleton monster with like sagging skin, just like trying to eat your apples. Um he would try to eat leftovers from other patients. He would scavenge the garbage. He would sneak into the apothecary's office to eat the pultuluses, meaning the kind of like cheesecloth that they would mush like herbs and stuff in. He would eat that. And this kind of brought the attention to Dr. Corville, who was the army surgeon, and Pierre Francois Percy, who was a baron, and he was a surgeon in chief of the hospital. And these two men started being kind of mad scientisty with Terrar.
Mm.
They started doing a series of physiological experiments. So, like, not the most, not the most ethical treatment of Terrar at this point, but you have to remember he was literally a sideshow performer for
Yeah.
most of his life.
Yeah.
Um, so whenever there would be cooking, they would have to restrain Terrar because he would go crazy trying to get out and eat whatever was being cooked.
Yeah.
So they made a meal for 15 laborers, like a giant meal. They placed it out on a table. And the meal included, I have the menu right here, two large meat pies, a plate of grease and salt, just grease and salt in a plate, 4 gallons of milk, apples, things like that. And it was just laid out in a spread. And they just kind of left it unguarded and let Terrar loose.
Oh my
And
goodness.
Terrar went to town, like the three ghosts from Casper when they're having breakfast. That's
Yeah.
just Terrar, just like opening his mouth wide, like Attack on Titans, and just like going to town.
Oh my God.
Um, so when they find him, his belly's completely extended. He's on the top of the table. He's sleeping. And after he ate, they always described Terrar as like just loud, like he would go like lethargic and go to sleep, but he would like loudly belch while he's sleeping, and his jaws would like kind of open and close like he's still chewing, like like that.
Yeah.
All right, listeners, if you are an animal lover, this is where I'm going to ask you to avert your ears. Um, as I said, this is Terrar's mad scientist era. He's being experimented on. They just fed him a meal for 15 labors. And this is like people who work heavy, long hours. So, what they do next is they start giving him live animals, birds, lizards, a kitten.
Oh
And
no.
oh, God, the way they described it is they hand the kitten to Terrar, and he, without even thinking, just and then
Oh,
tosses the
well,
bones aside, and like an owl, like owl pellets, like in science class in like
yeah.
sixth grade,
Yeah.
he's like uh, threw up the kitten's fur.
Oh no. I feel guilty
Yeah,
for laughing at that, but it's
I
like
know.
nervous
I was like,
laughter.
I was kind of thinking about not telling that part. They also gave him puppies, which they don't. They just say, "Oh, we also like puppies," but I'm like, okay. But after they described that, like the kitten eating incident, I'm like, okay, puppies, just go over there. Just we'll get to you later. They gave him a live eel, and he just kind of opened his jaw, bit once to crush the eel's skull, and then slurped it up like spaghetti. Um, have Have you ever seen an eel skeleton?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, so an eel has lots of tiny, tiny, like sharp bones in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Terrar's poor stomach, after he's like digesting that eel skeleton and it's like stabbing into him. Oof,
Yeah.
oof.
Yeah. Ugh.
Yeah. So after all of these experiments, you have to remember Terrar is still technically in military. He's still in the military.
Mhm.
So Dr. Corville approached General Alexandre de Beauharnois, and said, "Hey, we have this human garbage disposal system. Maybe we could use him as a spy. How do you think they're going to use? How do you think they're going to use Terrar as a spy?
Um, okay. Educated guess would be hiding notes in his stomach and regurgitating them, I guess.
Well, so they did another experiment where they put a note inside of a little wooden box and had Terrar swallow the box
Oh,
whole.
yeah.
And they waited for him to pass the box,
Hmm.
and then they opened the box and saw that the note was still legible. So they're like, "Genius! We
Oh,
can kind
goodness.
of smuggle notes across enemy lines with this 100-pound nightmare
Yeah.
creature."
Oh my God. I can't
um,
imagine that he would blend in very easily, though. You know?
we'll get to that.
Okay. Wonderful.
So for this experiment and to kind of like get him into the idea of doing this, they gave him as a reward 30 pounds of raw bull liver and lungs, which while in front of all of these generals and sergeants and lieutenants, he just immediately consumed. Just like that, just gurgle them all up. Um, so General de Beauharnois, he was a little concerned because obviously he was concerned with Tarar's mental state,
Yeah.
and also like they knew that he could physically do this, but like would he go to the right people? Like so, on his first mission, the note that he was supposed to deliver to a general that was behind enemy lines in a prison was basically, "Hey bestie, did you get this note? Box
Yeah.
yes, box no," like that kind of note. Like
Yeah.
it's like total like not even anything that you would want to like, not world shattering, not gonna turn the tides of war. Just like we just
Yeah.
want to make sure that it goes to the right person.
Yeah.
So they disguised Terrar as a German peasant, and under the cover of night, kind of push him across the borders into Germany, and kind of give him orders to go to find this captive general and deliver this note.
Hmm.
Um, in my imagination, they just put like lederhosen on Terrar and like the little like mountain cap, like he's going to like Oktoberfest, and he's like a
Yeah.
fake mustache with like a Groucho Marx nose, and he's just like kind of waltzing across the border. Terrar does not speak a lick of English, and he stinks to high heaven, and he looks like a an alien wearing a human skin that's about too many sizes too big. So of
Yeah.
course he draws attention. The actual villagers were like, who's this? And he is immediately captured by the Prussian army.
Yeah.
Immediately. Terrar is very much like, I'm not gonna give up the secret. I'm not gonna tell what's going on.
Yeah.
Um, so for like a day or two, he's like, they're giving him immense beatings, they're like tying him up. He's not saying anything till about 2 days without food. He's just like, oh, I'm so hungry. And
Yeah.
so he like blabs everything. He tells exactly what he's there for.
Yeah.
So they chain him up to a latrine, and after 30 hours, he passes the box.
Mm.
The Prussian general reads the note inside, and remember, the French general told Terrar that it's this big secret mission,
Yeah.
but like he reads the note and it's like, "Hey bestie, you okay? Get this message? Yes, no."
Yeah.
He's livid. The general is livid. He um he beats Terrar like savagely. He has them,
Mm.
you know, beat him, takes him to the gallows, ties a noose around his neck, puts puts the hood over his shoulder, the whole shebang. Poor Terrar is probably like terrified,
Mm.
and the general just couldn't go through with it because, this he's like, this guy's an imbecile. I can't do this. He's just following orders, and so they beat him again and just kind of toss him back over the border. Obviously, after this, Terrar is traumatized. He does not want to do any more military work. So he goes back to the military hospital begging to be cured. So we go into Terrar's mad scientist era 2.0. Um, so this is 1792 medicine. They gave him laudanum. That didn't work. They gave him a series of pills, of tobacco pills, and wine vinegar, which I'm like, I guess the vinegar would be like acidic and like kind of like make him not feel hungry, I guess.
Mm.
That didn't work either. They gave him a diet of large quantities of soft boiled eggs. Like when all else fails, just feed him eggs.
Yeah.
um, and that obviously didn't work because during this time, Terrar snuck out, and again, he went back to his old habits of fighting dogs in the streets for scraps of trash,
Mm.
scavenged for offal outside of butcher's shops. Offal is, basically beef guts. He would go and like look for like the parts that they toss out, and he'd just be like, Like a lot of a lot of images of Terrar of him like eating like guts.
Yeah.
So that's where he gets that. Um he would sneak into patients' rooms while they're undergoing bloodletting. And when the doctors were away, he'd like kind of like go underneath, like where they're like letting the blood try to like drink the blood as it drops.
That's the one. That's the
Um
fact that's gonna make me pass out.
oh no no no. The next fact might make you pass out. They
Oh,
had to
great.
put extra guards on the morgue. They had to put extra guard duty on the morgue because Terrar tried to sneak in and eat the corpses.
Oh God.
Yeah. Um, the other doctors at the facility were like, "My dude, this guy needs. We're not equipped for this gentleman. We need to put him
Yeah.
in like a lunatic home or something like that."
Yeah.
Um, I know lunatic home is not a politically correct term, but that is literally how it is written in the
Yeah.
like the text.
Yeah.
But Dr. Percy, he just kept him at the hospital to continue his experiments because I mean, Terrar's fascinating. And if I was a like 17, not 17, 1792 doctor, I'd want to like see what the extent of his eating is. Um, and then one day, a 14-month-old infant that was in the hospital disappeared.
Oh no.
Oh yes.
Dot dot dot.
Yeah, that was the final straw for the doctors.
Yeah.
Dr. Percy couldn't or wouldn't back up Terrar. It was a little too convenient that the child went missing, and they're like, "Okay, Terrar, pack up your loose skin and get out of here, buddy. You can't stay here anymore."
He all puts it in a suitcase.
He
You know.
just he just like rolls it up and like like leaves. Sad walking away music plays. It's like
Oh
rainy.
no.
Single tear goes down his cheek. He licks it up because it's salty. Um, they don't know if Terrar ate the child for certain. Back in this era, people would kidnap children and sell them a lot.
Yeah.
So I mean, it just kind of was Terrar made a scapegoat? Possibly. Did he eat a baby? Maybe. It's more fun to think of it that way.
Oh no.
Um, but that was kind of the last straw for the doctors, and he left. And no one heard from Terrar for a few years until 1798, when Terrar sent for Dr. Percy. He was in a hospital in Versailles, and he told them that he had swallowed a golden fork and needed Dr. Percy to remove it from him.
Mm.
And Dr. Percy gets over there because he's like, "Hey, my experiment. I hadn't talked to you in a while."
Yeah.
When he gets there, Terrar's bedridden. He looks terrible. He was dying of advanced stages of tuberculosis.
Mm.
So, a month after Dr. Percy arrived at the hospital, Terrar died after an extreme bout of diarrhea. That's what actually killed Terrar. Was he had a massive case of diarrhea,
Mm.
completely dehydrated him along with the TB, and he passed away. Um, they describe his corpse as immediately starting to rot, which means
Mm.
that it's just full of bacteria. Um, and the hospital didn't really want to do an autopsy, but Dr. Percy was no, not Dr. Percy. The head of the hospital that Terrar was at was like, no, 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 we have to do an autopsy.
Yeah.
Um, During the autopsy, they said when they opened Terrar's jaw and they had his head straight up and his jaw open, you could look down entirely through you could see directly into his stomach through like a passageway. Like open the jaw, just extended all the way down to his stomach, just full on, shine a light. You can see directly into his stomach. Um, his stomach and body were full of pus, and his stomach had many, many ulcers. And the entire stomach took over 90% of the torso cavity. Like our stomach only takes about, I want to say maybe 40%. His took 90%, just his stomach alone. Um, to this day, no one really knows why Terrar ate that way. Oh, and one more thing, they never did find the golden fork. So
Hmm.
maybe he swallowed it and it went through and that's it. But the golden fork was not stuck in his stomach. Um, to this day, we don't have a really good explanation for why Terrar was the way that he was.
Yeah.
Um, one of the explanations is Terrar may have had a damaged amygdala, part of the brain,
Hmm.
which is part of what kind of keeps us from going into extreme fits of anger and things like that, but that might have been damaged and caused him to not feel the feeling of cessation when you eat.
Hmm.
And they also say that he may have had extreme hyperthyroidism because they describe Terrar's hair as being very thin and soft.
Hmm.
And the fact that his lips were like very tiny and almost invisible, that those might have been symptoms of him being like having super hyperthyroidism.
Hmm.
Um, but beyond that, it's a very fascinating case. We don't know how much of this is factual and how much of it is fictional. It was printed in esteemed medical journals of the time because
Hmm.
it's a fascinating case. Like medically, like why this person is this way. Um, his background being a sideshow performer does add to the fact that maybe a little bit of it might be a little embellished, as we mentioned before,
Yeah.
just kind of
Yeah.
being a little careless with the truth. Um, if TLC was on the air back then, Terrar would have a special. Let's just say that.
100%. Yes. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Ugh. I don't know what to say right now. I'm like overwhelmed and super grossed out. So
And don't you feel like you need to take a shower and like brush your
yeah,
teeth after hearing that?
I feel like I should have ate something before, but yeah,
But
but
now you're like thankful that you didn't, because
kind of, wow. That's fascinating and frightening, and you know, hopefully in the world we don't have another Terrar ever
there
again.
were there were a few cases like Terrar in that era, in that like 1790s era.
Mm.
My only thought is it being pre-French Revolution France, that it's that kind of mentality, like if I don't eat now, I'm not gonna eat again,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah,
So they just consume, 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 consume. Um, but the fact that like I just feel that like for a lot of his existence, people were feeding him things that they probably shouldn't have. Like he would be
yeah.
he would be
Oh
fed
yeah,
like cow corpses. And it's like, come on, just cook it for him, my
yeah,
dudes.
yeah, yeah. That's kind of sad, actually. It reminds
It
me of
is kind of sad.
the geek in a Nightmare Alley where they're just torturing this poor human, and they lead
Oh
him on to
God.
believe that he's a monster. All right,
Well,
now that's depressing.
my yeah, one of my favorite movies, and it's not the most politically correct movie, but Todd Browning's Freaks.
Yes, yeah.
Um, I love the story of Daisy and Violet Hilton. If you've ever watched the documentary Chained by Flesh,
Mhm.
very, very fascinating story about them. And they were in that movie. For a lot of these people who were deformed, who had um, situations like Terrar, where
Mhm.
like he wouldn't be able to find a job anywhere else besides the military.
Yeah.
So it's good that we have advanced from that time frame where these people have to put themselves on display
Mhm.
to make money, to now. I'm so happy that we're out of that. Um, but it's still like it's fascinating to hear these stories of these people.
Yeah. Wow. All right. Well, thank you. You've
You're
definitely
welcome.
stunned me, freaked me out just a little bit, which is hard to do. It's hard to do. I've heard some weird stories, but I was like vaguely aware of that story, but not to that extent. And like when I thought it was gonna be the end, like, oh, this is the most weird thing he could eat. It just like went on and on. And another
And
shocking
his jaws opened
after.
wider and wider like a snake.
Exactly.
just
Oh my
just
goodness.
extending.
Oh my God.
Speaking of snakes, that was his favorite food. They said that like his favorite item to eat was snake meat. I'm just like, ugh!
But yeah, but like not as weird as other things.
Like
Yeah.
the baby. I personally don't think he actually ate the baby. I think that's a case of scapegoating. They already
Yeah.
wanted to get him out of the hospital. I'm certain the grocery bills were heightened while he was there.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And they
I
were
think they just
done
tried to get
studying
it. Yeah, they were just like, okay, get out of here, Tarar. You ate a
him.
baby. Get out of here. I don't think he actually did that.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna fan myself off. I'm gonna take a try not to think about this as I go to bed tonight. Or eat later on today. But that was a lot of fun. Thank you for being on my
You're
show.
welcome.
I
You're
hope you
welcome,
had fun.
bestie. I
Uh,
did have fun.
and we'll have to do this again sometime. So,
And listeners, if you like this sort of story, I often tell stories like this on my TikTok. It's Mr. Spooky 13 at Mr. Spooky 13. There was already a Mr. Spooky out on the internet before me, but I'm the one just really grabbing that name.
awesome. You're the official though, Mr. Spooky now.
I'm
You know.
according to IMDb, I am Mitchell Ralston, quote, Mr. Spooky, quote unquote.
Exactly. I actually saw that. I Googled you earlier today. And yeah, you came up as Mr. Spooky. So
Mr. Spooky, Mitchell Ralston. That's how it
yeah.
is on IMDb.
Oh man. All right. So but yeah, thank you. To my
You're
listeners,
welcome.
thank you for listening, like always. You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts. And soon Mitchell will be out there in the podcast world as well. And you'll have to catch him. But I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Go eat a large meal, you know.
Yes, eat a
Uh,
large meal in honor of Tarar and then take a healthy nap.
all right. Stay spooky, everyone. Ooh.
Ooh.